In the part 1 video, we looked at how to make a basic bar and column charts and adding some labels and styling and things like that. In this section, we're going to look at a couple of other chart types and a little bit more details. So I'm going to import some death certificate data. I'm also going to use a package called Revert, which allows you to work with dates. And I need that for this query right here that's going to make a new data frame that's counting up the deaths by year. So it's pulling the year out of the death date column and making that a new column, and then summarizing, counting up the deaths for each year. So let's run this quick and we'll look at it quick. So now we have each year and the number of deaths. And I want to plot this in a line chart. Let's make that go away. So the basics of a line chart are right here. It's very much like the bar chart. We feed it the data frame, and then we feed it what we want for the x-axis, in this case the year, and then what we want to count, in this case, which is the number of deaths. And then we put geom line instead of geom bar. That's really the only change. We're going to get a real basic black line, nothing fancy. Clearly it needs little work, but we've got a line chart, and this is showing this the way we wanted it. We can add some color and the size of and dictate the size of the line as part of that geom line section. So now we've got a green line, and the size on it, you can change that, make it fatter or skinnier. You can even go down to like half a point. I like the size 1 myself, at least on my screen. That seems to look good. And yes, I question this dip in this chart. I worry that there's maybe some missing data in 2010. That's one of the reasons I like charting things, is sometimes you see those weird anomalies like this in a chart. Okay, so we've got some problems to deal with. Look at the x-axis in particular, the way it's displaying the years, and the labels here and whatnot. So like we did with the bar and the column charts, we can use the scale x continuous and scale y continuous. In this case, we actually have 2 continuous scales. And in this case, we can tell it set the breaks. We're telling it that the breaks on the bottom are a sequence from 2005 to 2017. That's my stretch of my years. And then we can tell it put a label in for every other year. So that'd be every second year. If you put the number 1 in here, it's going to try to put every label in, which might get too crowded. It just depends on how much you have here. You might have to do every 5 or every 10, depending on your stretch of time. And then the scale y continuous is also, we can also do the breaks, and here we can ensure that it's a 0-base scale, which is what you want to do. So you can set the base at 0, and then you could tell it the top end, 500 looks sufficient, and then you could tell it put a label on for every 100. So if we run this now these look a little bit nicer, every 100 and every other year on the bottom. Then we can add the theme like we did in the earlier one, and we can add the labels, the title and subtitle, caption, source, Minnesota Department of Health. You can keep adding things like this on there. Pretty good line chart. Okay, let's move on. Grouped bar chart. So how about, I want to know, I'm going to make another little data frame that is the deaths by year by gender. So now we have 2 rows for each year. And this is what is called normalized data, so that it instead of having a female and a male column and only 1 row, if we had 1 row for each year and there was a column for female and a column for male, that would be what's called wide data. This is called long data or tidy data, where there's only one value on each row. And that's generally what ggplot prefers. So make sure you set up your data that way, especially when you start getting into these grouped and stacked bars, which is what we're going to look at next. So in this case, the ggplot line is only going to have the name of the data frame. And then we're going to feed it the aesthetics down on the geom bar line. We're still going to tell it the X and the Y. And then we're going to tell it to fill the color, so distinguish our bars by gender. And then this positioning is how you get it to put the two bars separate from each other. And you can see this is the default our ggplot colors. If you don't set the colors, this is what you get. It reminds me of the 1980s or something. So we need to change that up. So let's go down and do that. So you can see here's those two lines that we put above. We can now add another line called Scale Fill Manual, and you can specifically tell it, I want the values to be these two colors. And I got these from colorbrewer2.org. And then I'm also changing the labels, the F and the M, to female and male. And you have to put them in the order that they appear. And so you can see here the female is coming first, then the male. So I list the female first and then the male. And so that's going to give us our colors and some better colors and some better labels. And then like we did with the previous chart, we can put those breaks and the sequencing on the bottom, the x-axis. And then this line here, I'm not going to spend too much time on legends, but there's this theme line allows you to decide where that legend is going to go, and by the legend I mean this gender F and M, and if there's going to be a title on it. So doing legend.title equals element Blake is going to remove gender. It's just going to have a little color legend for you, and then there's the labels like we looked at before. So, and you can see it put the labels at the legend at the top, and it changed the female and male, and then gave us the nice colors. And notice that the colors, so this one's assigned to female and this one's assigned to male because it's the order that they are appearing in. So the order of that stuff, this stuff really makes a difference. Looking pretty good. All right, so let's say we want to do that same data but is a stacked. So right now, this side-by-side chart kind of allows us to see the growth in the females that you wouldn't see separately if we stacked it. But perhaps you do want it stacked since they do make up a 100% in each year. So the big difference is we're not going to do that position dodge. You can see we just say fill equals gender, and it automatically stacks them. And we say geom col here. That's the other thing. So up here we had geom bar. By making it a column now, and we tell it to fill with gender, then it splits the column based on whichever groupings you have. And of course, if you have more than one grouping, it'll split them by all those groupings. So then your scale fill manual needs to have however many groupings you have in the values to set the various colors. So let's say we picked let's say this fill was a column that had race, and there were 5 race categories. You would need 5 color values in here in order for this to work. Otherwise, it'll throw an error message at you. This labels part is totally optional. You wouldn't need it. And if I take it out of here right now, it's going to just revert back to the F and the M, which is also fine. So I'm going to undo that because I do like it with female and male. And then we can make this up. So all of that is what we just looked at. We can add on that scale X continuous. We can add the legend and the labels, and we get a much better, pretty chart. Okay, Let's move on. Multiple line chart. So we could also do these same things, female, male, in 2 lines on here instead of bars. So this one, we set the color equal to gender, and then we do geom line. And notice I'm assigning the size of the lines. That's totally optional, but it does help. And we didn't give it any colors, so it defaulted to those 2 ugly colors again. Let's change this to size equals 1, a little prettier. And now you can see that, remember that dip we saw in the other line chart, it's among the men, which is interesting, but it doesn't seem to be happening among the women. Okay, so there's what we had to begin with. So then if we add on that scale color manual, and we can get some better colors, and then we can fix the x-axis with scale x continuous. We can put the legend back at the top again, and then put our labels on again. There's ways in this legend how it's showing that background on there. There's ways to get rid of that. Notice I didn't put a theme on here. Let's do theme HC. The theme, this one automatically puts your legend at the bottom regardless, even if you've set it. Notice that I set it up here to top. Well, the theme overwrote that, so it automatically puts it at the bottom. But it looks a lot nicer. Doesn't have that background on there anymore. All right, one last thing. So sometimes you might want to save that plot. So if we, I'm going to copy this. If you have what we've been doing up until now, all of these, we've been plotting them on the fly. We're not saving them as a data frame or saving them in any way. They're just plotted on the fly. And you could, you can use this little code here, ggsave. You tell it the name of the file you want to create. If you want to put it in a different directory, you could put that right here, for example. I'm not going to put mine in a different directory. And then you can set the width, the height, if you want it in particular units. I put mine the DPI equal to print, which is kind of a print quality. If you go look at this web page for ggplot, which I've linked on here, it'll talk all about it. If I run this right now, it's going to save the last plot that was made, and you can see it. It's now down here in my files, and so it should be that line chart we just made. There it is. There we go. But if you want to be more precise, this is another way to do a ggplot. You assign it all using the assignment operator. So this is our same code from above, but I've assigned it now. And notice nothing appeared. I ran it, but nothing happened. You have to actually tell it to plot it, and then it will appear down below. There, this is the one without the theme on it. And then in your ggsave, then you could say your second argument in there would be the name of that plot that's saved. And so now if I run that, I now have another JPEG down in my files section, and that one is the one without the high charts theme. So you'll see I've seen lots of different ways of setting up ggplot, like in this case where you assign it or you don't assign it. It's all over the road. So you'll see different things when you go look for help. But there's the basics.